What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Public Health Happy Hour, where we're discussing the biggest public health news for the past week. Now, we're going to be talking about a host of topics, including East Palestine, as well as issues concerning the Harry Potter game. And so I'll implore y'all to watch the whole video. But if there's specific parts that y'all just want to watch, then definitely look at the chapters of this video and just go to the section that you would like to listen to. So the first piece of news we're going to talk about is that the dioxin spread after the Ohio train derailment. Some officials are raising concerns about a type of toxic substance that tends to stay in the environment. Last week, Sherry Brown and J.D. Vance, U.S. senators from Ohio, sent a letter to the state's Environmental Protection Agency expressing concern that dioxins may have been released when some chemicals in the damaged rail cars were deliberately burned for safety reasons. They joined residents of the small Midwestern town and environmentalists from around the U.S. calling for the state and federal agencies to test the soil around the site where the tanker cars tipped over. Now, for those who don't know, dioxins refer to a group of toxic chemical compounds that can persist in the environment long periods of time. Now, if you don't know, dioxins are a group of toxic chemical compounds that can linger in the environment for a long period of times. They're created through many natural products, but oftentimes they're created through combustion and attached to many dust particles, making sure that they'll be able to linger to the ground and be able to circulate within that ecosystem. While some people near the burning site where the vinyl chloride was burnt off might get exposure through like skin, inhaling the dust particles with the dioxins in it, what we're mainly concerned about the dioxins being in the soil is because they can get into the fish, they can get into the animals, and basically get into the ecosystem and subsequently into the food chain. Now, the big concern with this is that there was a big black plume whenever they were burning off the vinyl chloride during the initial burn off. It could travel for miles and miles and miles, and it can get into people's farms, it can get into people's wells, it can get into people's, houses, it can accumulate on the roof and stuff. Like, there's so many different things that dioxins can linger in the environment. The fact of the matter is, dioxin is a known carcinogen, and basically if you get a lot of this in the environment, then you're gonna have a lot of people coming up with cancer. And by the amount of stuff that was burned off in the subsequent explosion that happened in East Palestine, we won't really know the true effects of this until years and years down the line. Another vulnerable group that we need to talk about is fetuses and newborns, and more so pregnant women as well, because pretty much they can also get effects from dioxins in the form of underdeveloped organs or damage to their organs while they're still developing and such. This is something that you don't want to have, and pretty much the danger has always been near industrial industries, because that's where a lot of dioxins are produced through industrial burning, whether it be through waste sites, incineration plants, paper industries, construction, whatever. But as many experts have noted, they don't know that the soil has been tested for dioxins or not. And even if it's costly and expensive, it's better to just test it and just make sure up front, what they could expect, because at the end of the day, it's just, there's a huge possibility that dioxins were burnt off, because this can be seen as like an industrial fire. And to give you some perspective on how much it costs to have an analysis of, it can range from $1,000 from a single biological sample to about several $1,000s if you want to look at a comprehensive assessment of the release from a waste incinerator, for one example. From my perspective, this is a big release that spans several miles, and there was talks that like a cloud was actually floating in from the crash site to more like the northeast. My perspective, and pretty much a lot of people's perspective, this is going to be a costly operation if they decide to do it, which I think they need to do. While I don't have the experience to really attest how far this exposure could extend, many experts, especially Veronica Edmonds-Brown, expert in urban river pollution from the University of Hertfordshire in UK, said that it could potentially be over 100 miles in the radius. This is going to be a costly cleanup as well as a costly, operation on the part of Norfolk Southern, who's already having lawsuits, about the disaster. But at the end of the day, this is something that needs to be done, because there's a lot of unknown, contaminants that still haven't been found. Now, going into the C19 part of the newscast, basically might be a natural cure that has been found for the disease. A new peer-reviewed study from the Tokyo Institute of Technology has potentially found a natural cure for C19. The study was published in the journal PLOS One earlier this month. The study found that the natural amino acid called ALA, I'm just not gonna say the whole name, is an effective way to reduce the expression of ACE2, which is a receptor for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, a strain of the C19 virus, which allows the virus to infect a cell, so probably the spike protein. Therefore, this amino acid can reduce the infectivity of C19. ALA can be found in spinach, tomatoes, chickpea, mushrooms, potatoes, squid, ground beef, wine, and soy sauce, according to clinicaltrials.gov. So we're going to be looking at the study itself. Basically, the abstract, angiotensin converting enzyme 2, which is ACE2, an entry receptor found on the surface of host cells, is believed to be detrimental to the infectious capability of the severe acute respiratory syndrome CE2. Scientists have been working on finding a cure since this outbreak with limited success. In this study, we evaluated the potential of an ALA in suppressing AC2 expression of host cells. Basically, AC2 expression of host cells, it's like the cells on your host, you know. I actually have a graph right here to show you more about what I was saying earlier. So basically, you got the spike protein, you got the AC2 receptors, and you got the host cell right here. So this is your club, this is your doorway, this is the party pooper right here, you know. And basically what they're trying to do is get it to where they have, you know, secure doorways, basically no doorways at this point right here, and to prevent them from trying to, you know, connect and spread the virus into the cells. And so looking from the methods and the actual study, no human subjects were, you know, in this test trial. They basically just used, I guess, cell culture from a pharmaceutical company to like test this theory. All right, so we're going to be looking at the relative intensity of the ACE2 cells in 2 different cell lines, basically from HepG, which is a cancerous, I think, liver cancer cell line, as well as Vero E6, who came from the lining from African green monkeys. And so it pretty much worked. I mean, there's a less expression of ACE2, even though we're still testing this out at 1, while with the ALA, it still has been, you know, reduced by at least half in most cases. Now it's combined with not only just the ALA amino acid, but also the heme inhibition substance right here. And pretty much they had the same results, that either or has reduced them, as well as with them together, they really don't reduce it more in the cancer line, but in the green monkey, you know, liver tissues, basically they done the same thing here. With the relative intensity of AC2, like basically it has drastically decreased. So yeah, I think this is something worth looking more into. Obviously there's no cure for C19, but this is very, very promising because it not only allows for another cure, but it allows for another tool to fight the virus. As the years go on, like it's going to continue to mutate, it's going to continue to infect, and it's just like we're not at a point where we can commonly say it's going to be like a flu virus where it can be like less severe. Because flu doesn't damage your organs, flu doesn't damage your heart. There's a lot of long-term effects we are getting from C19 that we need to really just, you know, start being more aware of. Now, in other news, the nasal C19 vaccine shows promise in early clinical trials. Basically, nasal vaccines could provide better protection against infections by bolstering immunity right where the virus enters the body, according to preliminary results from a phase 1 trial. The vaccine developed by the startup Blue Lake Biological Tech was found to reduce the risk of symptomatic COVID infections by 86% for 3 months in people who received it as a booster dose. Existing booster dose shots in the United States reduced symptomatic infection by 43% in people 18 to 49 over 1 to 2 months. The results from the clinical trial offer an early but tantalizing glimpse of how a next generation vaccine could be more effective at stopping the coronavirus in its tracks. Now, the reason why people say that nasal vaccines are a lot better than, you know, injecting in your arm is because COVID-19 enters through your nostrils and basically goes into your lung and affecting your respiratory system. And so providing protection within that system first, especially, you know, talking about nasal vaccines instead of just injecting something in your arm. Vaccines of this type has been approved in India, Iran, and Russia, and 2 others are being used in China, along with an inhalable version that was approved in September for use as a booster. But with that being said, we don't know anything about these vaccines. They haven't released many details about their trials or efficacy, so I can't really just say if they're safe or say that, you know, they're promising. From the phase 1 results, basically they had about 72 participants ages 18 to 55 who had already received at least 2 doses of the mRNA vaccines, as well as unvaccinated healthy adults. The trial began in August 2021, so almost about a year and a half ago, and the scientists will continue collecting data from participants into December. So pretty much they're going to continue doing this at the end of the year. Although the findings are preliminary and more research needs to be done involving more people to get a broad conclusion, this is a very promising vaccine because pretty much, you know, it provides a new way that we can provide protection, even longer lasting protection, to the point where it can really prevent, the virus from actually infecting an individual. The vaccine uses a type of para-influenza virus encoded with the coronavirus spike protein to train the immune system to recognize and fight it. To replicate itself inside the nasal cavity for several days at levels that are just enough to trigger an immune response without acting or actually getting people sick. This works by leveraging the following two ways that the respiratory system encounters identifies foreign invaders. And so looking at the actual data of this clinical trial, we've known that it was first submitted on June 30th, 2021. First posted date, as well as the last updated post, was February 21st, so this week. Now, right here, they're talking about the primary outcomes and secondary outcomes. They're basically trying to see, what measures are they going to use, or what metrics are they going to use to test to see if this vaccine is working, such as what type of adverse chronic medical conditions take place during a certain time frame. If it does take place, the adverse effects that happen within 30 minutes of dosing, a lot of times people might get allergic reactions within 15 minutes of the dosing with the actual boosters or the original boosters. So these are just safety measures they put in place. This is the study description, as well as just in general, just kind of how the group is made up of, the recruitment information. They had about 80. Right here, they said about estimated 80 people enrolled, but they only went with 72. Probably during the screening process where they didn't want to put them at risk, especially if a person had diabetes, obesity, or being immunocompromised, basically, because we don't want to put them at risk during a study. Primary completion date will be December 16th of 2023, so this might be able to get a general look at how effective this vaccine is. So pretty much, we can expect results at the end of the year. They have the inclusion criteria right here, which it provides informed consent. Everyone has to have informed consent to participate in the trial. Agrees to collection of venous blood per protocol. Blood sample is, normal. Women of childbearing potential must have a negative urine or serum pregnancy test within 24 hours prior to vaccination. The exclusion criteria is a positive pregnancy test. Obviously, like I said, we don't want to have no pregnant people in this trial. Human subject who is breastfeeding or plans to breastfeed from the time of vaccination through 6 days after vaccination. Anyone at high risk of severe COVID-19 disease, as per CDC guidance, has a positive test for hepatitis B surface antigen, as well as HIV types 1 or type 2 antibodies at screening. So in my personal opinion, this might be a good trial. We still need to take more time to look at it, but I think we're developing the tools we need to be able to get to the quote-unquote normal people are starting to go back towards. And like I always say, COVID is not done. 400 people daily are being unalived by this disease, which is very much unacceptable for being the most developed country in the nation. Now, going into more LGBTQIA plus rights issues, that's been a very, huge contention point in the quote-unquote culture war that's been raging on for the past few years. Going more into the bits and pieces, the Tennesse is set to ban some drag performances as well as gender-affirming health care for transgender minors after state house lawmakers sent both bills to Republican Governor Bill Lee's desk for final approval on Thursday. Tennessee's Senate bill are introduced in November by State Majority Leader Jack Johnson, seeks to amend an existing state law preventing adult-oriented businesses from operating within 100,000 feet of schools, public parks, or places of worship to include, adult cabaret, which legislation defines as performances that feature male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest. I've not seen that word before. Prurient is basically an adjective marked by or arousing an immoderate or unwholesome interest or a desire marketed by arousing or appealing to a sexual desire. Shows with topless dancers, go-go dancers, exotic dancers, and strippers may also be classified as adult cabaret performances under proposed laws, which I agree. This is something that we need to talk about. Johnson, in a statement to Reuters this week, said the measure should give confidence to parents that they can take their kids to a public or private show and will not be blindsided by a sexualized performance. Tennessee Representative Chris Todd, who sponsored the campaign House Bill 9, told his colleagues on Thursday that he was driven to introduce a measure after filing a court order last year to stop an advertised family-friendly drag show from taking place in a public park. The drag performance, organized as part of a LGBTQI plus Pride event in Jackson, was ultimately forced to move to an indoor location limited to spectators aged 18 years and older. Johnson's bill passed the Senate earlier this month on vote 26-6. House Bill 9 passed on Thursday, 74-19. It will now head to Lee's desk, where it is expected to be signed into law. The drag ban is the first in the nation to pass a state legislature. Now, here's some of the most concerning part of this article: banning gender affirming care for minors. Tennessee House Legislature on Thursday also sent a measure to bar transgender youth from assessing gender affirming health care to governor's desk. On a 77-16 vote, the proposed bill, which was introduced in November by Johnson, aims to prohibit health professionals from providing gender-affirming care to minors. The legislation includes exceptions for youth who require treatments like puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapies, and surgeries for a reason other than the treatment of gender dysmorphia or mental condition, disorder, disability, or abnormality. House Majority Leader William Lambert, who sponsored a campaign bill in the House, wrote in an October Tennessean op-ed that his and Johnson's bills were partially informed by reporting from the conservative broadcasters and Daily Wire columnist Matt Walsh. That is very problematic because you should not be getting your opinions from a commentator, a podcaster. It should be informed by science if you're making healthcare decisions. So culture forces from the left would like us to accept an alarming new myth that gender is not a biological reality. Gender affirming care for transgender youth and adults is considered safe and medically necessary by most major medical organizations. If you have most medical organizations saying that, this is, safe and medically necessary, then that is also a problem. We'll go more into that detail later. In September, a set of viral social media posts from Walsh claimed Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Tennessee was abusing children by providing gender-affirming medical care to minors, resulting in calls for investigation into the hospital's transgender health clinic. Vanderbilt University Medical Center accused Matt Walsh of misrepresenting facts about the care provided for transgender youth. I just want to look at this statement from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Basically, it says right here, children and adolescents who are grown up gay, lesbian, bisexual, gender nonconforming, or gender discordant. Basically, they're not feeling comfortable with their own biological sex. Basically experience unique developmental challenges. They are at risk for certain mental health problems, many of which are significantly correlated with stigma and prejudice. For the most part, because gender affirming care isn't, getting surgery to like remove your, genitalia. It's not just puberty or hormone blockers. It basically mental health services that encompasses a kid, going through these changes, and basically they're trying to guide them through. This can include mental health services, and this can include, pronouns, changing their, hair, their like, changeable appearances before they do anything irreversible. If you want to seek these services out, it's not just because they feeling something with themselves. It's because you got kids bullying, especially when it comes to stigma and prejudice, because people need to admit that we have a huge stigma and prejudice against, trans individuals, especially because they think, oh, men are trying to go into, girls' bathroom and just be perverts. Like, I don't feel comfortable with my daughter, being friends with them, or having to share a locker room with them, or I don't want to have to share a restroom with them. I just feel so uncomfortable when at the end of the day, it's not really about you. Like, trans individuals make up less than 1% of this country. It's one of those things where it's just like, it does not matter what people are doing with their lives. It's not going to affect you vastly in any regards of your day-to-day life. Now, going to the World Medical Association, they said emphasis that everyone has the right to determine one's own gender and recognizes the diversity of possibilities in this respect. Affirms that any health-related procedure or treatment related to an individual's transgender status, which is surgical intervention, hormone therapy, psychotherapy, requires a freely given and informed consent of the patient. A child under 18 or 17, a child that's 13 cannot give informed consent. And informed consent can be determined when you get all the information and it is made aware that you're not being influenced by anybody. But most of the research I've done said that it is informed consent made between the parent, the child, and the medical professional. If a parent wants their child to have what they think is best for them at the end of the day, that is none of y'all business. Like, if y'all not going to feed these children, if y'all not going to clothe these children, if you're not going to foster these children you claim to care so much about, then why are y'all having issues with this? Basically, it's one of those things where it's the same thing as abortion. Like, abortion is medically necessary for many people because God forbid, most politicians think that, people are just being careless with sex nowadays. When it's happened because of something happened during the pregnancy, whether a partner dies, the mother don't feel comfortable, taking care of children no more. They want to, they can't handle it. Complication happens in the pregnancy and they have to terminate the pregnancy, as well as women are getting R-worded at a daily basis and have to birth their children. It's just something many medical associations I've also said that abortions are medically necessary in the event that something like those I've just listed happens. If these politicians really cared about the people and really cared about making sure we have a robust safe society, you need to understand that they will have better effects of listening to medical professionals that know what they're talking about and doing the right thing, not banning this type of care, but also expanding it instead of trying to fight these so-called culture wars that they invented, that they came up with, that created a narrative around this and basically have used to swindle and scam the entire American population to get more money and funneling to their campaigns and into their personal pockets. Now, the drag shows I've been to weren't family friendly, so I haven't really been to a quote unquote family friendly drag show, in my opinion. So I really can't attest to what they were going to show. But my thing is, there have been times where, drag, queens have done readings for, kids that kept it PG-13 or under or PG. They've done, donation drives for kids. They've done a lot of good for many communities. How much our government can't even do for its own people, but they feel the void in this aspect. So I don't understand them saying, oh, this is a big win. Oh, we're protecting our kids. Like they said right here. In our community, it's not age appropriate. I'm just bruh, it's not that big of a deal, especially when you talk about pride. I've been to many pride shows that has been family friendly with no lewd, no content in it. Basically, I've seen kids watch it and they really enjoy those shows because at the end of the day, they don't really care about who's behind the mask or who's behind the facade or, what type of message is being sent to them. They don't feel like they're being brainwashed. They're just enjoying a fun show. And they're learning about a type of community that hasn't really been spotlighted. Another thing I just want to say too is just one, if you're having issues with, LGBTQIA plus rights, and if you're not LGBTQIA plus yourself or having a child or family member, anyone in part of that community, you got no say in these issues to begin with. That's my one thing I just want to say. Two, they're not a threat to people. The things I've considered more of a threat to people is religion. Because let's not forget the Crusades that happened. We went to war over Christianity. A lot of your faves in the Christianity community probably would have supported sending kids to convulsion therapy or electroshock therapy back in the day if they were part of the LGBTQIA plus community. Another thing we can talk about is that racism, sexism, any type of ism has many roots in Christianity. People use the Bible and use Jesus Christ, the Lord and Savior, to say that black people should be slaves. Black people were meant to be slaves. We used that many years, and this is what type of ruling we're using right now to tell oh, they're demons. They're, trying to indoctrinate our children. When you have priests, who are violating children's young boys, especially in the Catholic Church, let's not forget about that too, to the extent where it's just it's very egregious. There's nothing wrong with taking your kids to a pride show. There's certain pride events you shouldn't go to, don't get me wrong, because there's a lot of lewd and sexual content that children shouldn't be exposed to. But really, that's also on TV that we need to talk about, because 9 times out of 10, I'll be seeing a lot more sexual content than I would have been seeing if I was trying to get into OnlyFans that's being done on TV. You got a lot of black old heads and stuff who are still, talking about, oh, there's an agenda every time they're seeing gay sex scenes on TV, or if they see a trans individual being talked about in the news or in pop culture and all that. And at the end of the day, you're saying what white people had said about black people in the 60s when we just try to get representation. Let's have an honest truth about that. This is the same rhetoric that white people have been using for many years when they talk about, having somebody not white being represented in media, represented in pop culture, and represented in music and all that. Let the LGBTQIA plus community thrive because they deserve their fair share of things. They deserve representation because they've been around for years and years and years. They just haven't gotten mainstream attention until recent years. I don't think it's a big issue for people to go to school with them. It's not a big issue to kids to actually learn about this community because at the end of the day, they're going to be exposed to it whether, they're 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, 18 years old, and they need to learn to coexist with them. Now going to the next topic. So basically we have a Brianna G. I don't know how to really pronounce her name. I don't want to butcher it out of respect. She was a trans individual, 16-year-old who was unalived by 2 other teenagers. Brianna, 16, was found stabbed in Warrington Park on Saturday afternoon. Police have said a few lines of inquiry are being pursued, including whether it was a hate crime. A teenage girl and boy appeared to have been before a district judge at Chester Magistrates Court on Wednesday, charged with the unaliving. The teenagers have been in custody since their arrest on Monday. Detectives have urged the public to avoid speculation online and be wary of sharing misinformation relating to this case. Vigils were held in cities across the UK on Tuesday night in memory of the teenager. It described that the teenager was an outgoing, confident girl. She brought a lot of laughter to those who knew her, and she was looking forward to taking her exams this year and beginning her journey into the adult world. She was tormented by bullies as she was trans. It has been claimed by her father, by a gang at Birchwood Community High School, and Brianna's father allegedly complained to the school, and she confessed to a friend that she was devastated by the abuse. Anyone would, honestly, at that age. Damien Harry, the father of one of Brianna's friends, said that she has been bullied online in the past. She was devastated by the constant abuse and even talked about unaliving herself. It was down to her being trans. It is discussing what happened. Her dad has apparently said he raised safeguarding at the school 1,000 times, but little was done about it. The abuse was constant, all because she was just different. Now, the reason I brought this up, now the Harry Potter game that has been getting a lot of criticism because obviously J.K. Rowling is known to be a transphobe and have said many transphobic things and problematic comments in the past few years. Now, I'm not going to show what she said or go into detail about what she said, but basically this has caused one of the biggest debate in gaming where people are actually targeting streamers online for actually streaming the game and, just playing it, enjoying it, and saying that they're, complicit in the transphobic things that are going on, complicit in Brianna Ghrey's unaliving, and that they are, scum of the earth. Really just give you some perspective, despite the backlash that has been taking place on, the internet about Hogwarts Legacy. They have actually earned about $850 million in sales so far within 2 weeks of the game releasing. So really just give my opinion on this whole situation. One, I don't support transphobic, comments or anything like that. I don't support J.K. Rowling, nor do I really care about Harry Potter or, any of its IPs and all that, because truly I never got invested in the series. I was more of a Star Wars kid. With that being said, I don't think it's okay to harm. I don't think it's okay to, slander. I don't think it's okay to really just threaten people who are trying to enjoy the game, because here's why. People enjoy video games not to get into political debates. They just want to enjoy games, see if they're fun. As I've seen it, Hogwarts Legacy is fun. I've seen many people stream it. I think people should be allowed to enjoy that. Now, if you feel uncomfortable with supporting someone who has bigoted remarks or anything like that, that is totally okay. You have the right not to buy the game, not to participate in the market for that. But that doesn't mean everyone needs to subscribe to your whole worldview and purview and all that, because let me tell you, they've already paid for the IP of this game. Like, they were working on this game well before J.K. Rowling was making those transphobic, comments. And at the end of the day, it's one of those things where they've already sunk money into development. They already sunk money into the cost. They already sunk money into actors and stuff. They already working on the game. It's not like they can just stop a project. Keep in mind, this wasn't just a Warner Brothers game production or a J.K. Rowling production. She has no creative process within this whole thing. The producer, which is Avalanche Studios, are just trying to make money, and they've already come up with this idea years and years before J.K. Rowling even said what she said. And at the end of the day, it's not fair to them to just sink a cost in the game they've already invested time, money, and energy into, invested writing into, because I believe the time she made the comments, they were actually starting to do the story and all that and really just flesh out the mainly details and all that. So at the end of the day, I don't really not going to blame them from producing the game, because they need to make money and they already sunk costs in it. And they made a smart move, because Harry Potter is one of the biggest franchises in the world, even though a lot of people like me don't really, mess with it. It's not fair for you to really just blame the death of a teenager that was done out of hateful spite on people that really don't have any hateful spite or really want to support hateful spite. They just want to support a fun game, whereas a lot of the money is going towards the studio. And yes, J.K. Rowling is gonna get royalties from it. She's gonna get commission because she's using the NIL of, basically the Wizarding World. But at the end of the day, this is just a small piece of the pie, because she's making money off of other IPs that is related to Harry Potter, which is the movie, the rights to stream the movie, to rights to go see the movie, the rights to, you know, making other stuff off the movie like Legos, toys, articles, fan fiction, you know, whatever. She's making rights in many, many different forms than just this game. Not only people are not trying to attack those other forms or really just talk about, you know, the vastness of her net worth, but it's just like, what are y'all doing for trans rights, you know, outside of what you're doing on Twitter? If other people just want to play a fun game, a game they've been waiting for years, because Harry Potter's, whether you like the artist or not, was their childhood. Like, this is many people's childhoods before J.K. Rowling became a monster. Then they have a right to live their childhood. And my last piece of news today is going to be about mental health. This is going to be in response to Senator John Fetterman. Basically, he had checked himself into Walter Reed National Military Medical Center for treatment for clinical depression. The reaction is a far cry from what had been done 20 or even 10 years ago, as the more politicians from both parties are willing to admit they are humans with human frailties. Cajun had a podcast, and basically what they took away from this week's episode, acknowledging mental health disorder could spell doom for a politician's career in the past, but rather than raising questions about his fitness to serve, John Fetterman's decision to make his depression diagnosis and treatment public raises the possibility that personal experiences with the health system would make lawmakers better representatives. In Medicare, at the end of the day, they're humans just like any other people. They are driven by human desires, as well as many people are suffering from depression that often don't want to admit it. So I feel like what he's done to really acknowledge his, you know, mental health, I think that's, you know, brave of him to do, and really like something that's necessary, because it's still stigmatized in many ways in our society. Many people understand that stressors associated with the start of a new career while still recovery and from a serious ailment can contribute to chronic mental health issues. It's very taxing to start a new career, i.e. being a senator, after you just came back from a stroke. And it's just, that's not saying that he is bad for the job or he shouldn't be able to do the job or all that. I think he's very capable. It's just sometimes, you know, life happens. And I think Tom Brady said it best a few months ago when he took a week off during training camp. He said sometimes life just gets hard, stuff happens, and it's just, you gotta take time for yourself. That's one of the best things he's done in his career, even when he was going out bad. But with that being said, this has been Public Health Happy Hours. If you like what you see today, please like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, all that wonderful good stuff. Comment how you feel about some of these stories, because I know I talk about a lot of contentious topics, and I really want to see your opinion on it as well. And while you're here, please go watch my other video about the East Palestine Train Derailment, as I discuss the initial timeline as well as my thoughts on the whole situation in general. Stay warm, stay frosty, depending on what part of the country, and peace out.